Hi guys, good evening. Right there. Please don't forget to turn your cameras on. Okay, guys. So today we're going to be moving on to the speaking section. Last week we finished looking at the listening section. So today let's move on to the speaking section, which is the third part of the TOEFL test, the third section. The speaking section is going to be around 20 to 25 minutes long. It's honestly the shortest one in terms of time, but it happens to be the longest one in terms of questions. It's over 30, just like the other sections. And we're going to analyze what we have here in the speaking section. Okay, guys. So in the speaking section, we have 4 different types of questions, or 4 different questions in total. Now we're going to call these questions either questions or tasks. Okay, guys, we have 4 tasks or 4 questions. Question 1, question 2, 3, and 4, or task 1, task 2, task 3, and task 4. Now these questions are organized in independent question and integrated questions. What does that mean? Pretty much independent means that in that question, in the first question that is independent, you guys are going to have to talk about yourselves. You're going to have to talk about your own opinion on something. You're going to have to present your opinion about something. And in the integrated questions, you won't have to give your opinion. You can talk about yourself. You're only going to focus on summarizing something, either a conversation, a lecture, a reading, whatever it is, but you have to focus on summarizing something else. So today we're going to start looking at the independent question. We're going to see what it is, what you have to do there, tips and hacks and sample responses. And this week we're actually focusing on this. Okay, guys, do you have any questions before we start then with the independent question today? Hey guys, now before we start looking at the independent question, I wanted to talk to you guys about the way that they will score or the way that they will evaluate your speaking section. You need to remember that this is entirely different than reading and listening. Reading and listening is pretty simple. It's automatically scored. That means that everything is multiple choice in the reading and listening, and you have a correct or an incorrect answer, and there's nowhere to get lost. But in the speaking section, there's no such thing as a correct answer as an incorrect one. Instead, they will evaluate your responses. They will grade your responses based on a certain criteria. And we're going to talk about that criteria now. You guys can find this online if you search for TOEFL speaking rubric. Then the first result that pops up, that's the one. It's a PDF published by the official ETS website that describes what you need to do in order to get different scores in the speaking section. This one here. So I'm also going to send you guys this link in case you want to check it out when you have some time. I'm sending you guys the link. Okay, guys. But basically, if we summarize that PDF and we talk about the things they want, the things they're looking for in your responses for you to have good scores, we're going to talk about 3 different categories, 3 different rubrics that they are based on. The first one is topic development. The second is language use. And the third is delivery. So, Luis, please, could you read what we have for topic development?
In task fulfillment, coherence, consistentness, time, support and development, details and example, and justification, connection and structure, a connector progression of ideas.
Thank you so much, Luis. So topic development basically refers to what you say. So this is closely related to the content of your response. So for example, the first thing that they want, obviously, is for you to fulfill the task. That means for you to answer the question they are asking directly, coherently, that means that it has to make sense, concisely, so you're not going over the same ideas once and twice and three times and over again, and that you use the time that you have proportionately. So let's say they ask you about music. A response that's coherent is going to be one that doesn't change of topic, right? If you start talking about food when they ask you about music, that's obviously not coherent. It's not logical. It needs to be concise, which means that you cannot be redundant. You cannot repeat your ideas too much. And you need to organize your time properly. So you're obviously not going to spend, let's say that you have 45 seconds to answer the first question. You're not going to spend 20 seconds in your introduction, right? That's too much. So that's basically task fulfillment. Then you have support and development, which basically means how well supported, how well elaborated your ideas are. If you say, I like pizza, that's fine, but you need to support and you need to develop that idea. You need to tell me why you like pizza, what you like about pizza. You need to give details. Maybe you can tell me about your favorite type of pizza, what ingredients it has. You need to give me examples. Maybe you can talk about one time where you had a pizza that you didn't like, maybe. So you need to support and develop your ideas really well with examples, with details, with justifications. You need to explain why you like pizza. You need to give details as to what type of pizza you like, examples as to experiences. And finally, connections and structure, which basically means that your ideas are well connected and that they flow easily. And in order for you guys to connect your ideas properly, you need to make good use of connectors and transition words. So you need to show contrast by using a. However, you need to show addition by using in addition. You need to show cause and effect, maybe by using as a result. So using these connectors is largely going to help your response. And it's also going to improve the structure of your response. Okay, guys? So that's topic development. If you guys have all of that, then you're good with this. Now, delivery also matters. Delivery is related to how you say it. So it is obviously related to how you pronounce the words. If you are pronouncing them in a way that they are easy to understand. So the person who's listening to your responses needs to be very easily able to understand what you're saying. Your responses have to be intelligible. That means that they have to be easy to follow. You don't have to put any effort when listening to you to understand what you're saying. They have to be well articulated so that what you're saying is clear. And you have to put certain attention into how you intonate the words, how you stress them, if you're stressing them or intonating them correctly, because that shows fluency. At the end of the day, everything is related to how fluent you are. So if you guys listen to somebody that's fluent to speak, you're going to notice that they don't speak in a linear way, right? It's not like they're reading. When they speak, when somebody that's fluent speaks, there are some parts in which you lower your voice a little bit. There are other parts in which you raise your voice, in which you stress certain words. For example, the negatives are usually stressed. I say, please do not do this, right? I don't say do not do this, do not do this. So I am stressing the word not. So it's important that you guys also practice that, intonation, pronunciation. And obviously flow and speech which has to do with not making too many pauses, not using too many filler words like like, no, you can't use those filler words too much. You can abuse those filler words. It's better if you don't make too long pauses so that you show that you're fluent. Okay, guys, that's delivery. And finally, obviously, we have language use, which includes vocabulary and grammar. So this makes a lot of sense. if you guys want to get, let's say, 110 in your TOEFL test in the speaking, for the speaking section, you would need around 27, 28, right? If you want to get this score that corresponds to, let's say, a C1, C2 level, you need to show the vocabulary of a C1 student. You can be using basic words and expect your score to be high, right? So it depends on what you need. If you really want a top score, you're gonna need to show a wider range of vocabulary, and not only a wider range, but you're also gonna need to use appropriate vocabulary. So if you're talking about businesses, you can say people, you need to say customers. You can say things, you need to say products. If you're talking about relationships, you can say, so my wife and I don't know, ended our relationship. You can say that. You need to say, my wife and I split up, for example. So you need to use appropriate expressions that show that you have that vocabulary. And grammar is the same. If you want a score for a C1, then you need to have the grammar of a C1 advanced student. You can make grammar mistakes in like verb tenses and expect to have a good score, right? And you need to also show grammar variety. So show that you can use different structures. Let's say that you can use the active and the passive voice, conditional sentences, different tenses, compound sentences. So you need to make sure that you show variety in the grammar that you use. Okay, guys? So this is how they're going to evaluate your responses based on these things here. If you guys have all of them, then you should get a top score. And if you have a couple, then maybe that could be decreasing your score a little bit. But obviously, it doesn't have to be perfect. When I say don't make grammar mistakes, what I mean really is don't make too many grammar mistakes. Because even native speakers make mistakes, that's fine. But if you're constantly repeating the same grammar error, that means that you have a problem with that grammar point. So that's probably gonna take some points out. But if you made one, no problem. You can still get a perfect score. If you made a pause, it's okay. Everybody makes pauses when speaking. If you use a filler word, that's fine as well. The thing is that you don't do these things constantly when you're speaking. Okay, guys? So that's it. That's how they're going to be evaluating your responses. They actually score you from a scale of 1 to 5. 5 is the highest that you can get, and it's equivalent to a 20 to a 25 to 30. Okay, guys? And 1 is the lowest you can get, which is equivalent to a 5 to 10, I think. So is that okay, guys? Do you have any questions so far?
It's okay.
Okay, guys. So without further ado then, let's get to the first independent question. We're going to very quickly watch a video on how this question works, how it will be on your screen, so that you guys know what to actually expect at the day of your test. You know the format of this question. So this is exactly how the question will go when you're taking the test.
Number 1. In this question, you will be asked to give your opinion about a familiar topic. After you hear the question, five seconds. Number 1. In this question, you will be asked to give your opinion about a familiar topic. After you hear the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak. State whether you agree or disagree with the following statement. Then explain your reasons, using specific details in your explanation. Learning through online courses is more effective than learning in the traditional classroom setting.
Begin to prepare your response after the beep. Begin speaking after the beep.
Okay, guys. That's how it's gonna go. As you can see, you first get the instructions. The instructions are very clear, very simple. They say that they will give you a question, and what you have to do is talk about your opinion on that question. They give you 15 seconds after they read the question for you. So they show you the question on the screen. They will read it for you as well. You can obviously read at the same time if you want, but they will read it for you whether you want it or not. And then they will give you 15 seconds for you to prepare. So you can do whatever you want during those 15 seconds. They are not recording anything, by the way. They just give you those 15 seconds. They show you the timer, so to show you how much time you have. You do whatever you want to prepare, and then they ask you to speak. And they also show you the timer. As soon as they say, begin speaking after the beep sound, you hear the beep, beep, and then they start recording. So whatever you say during those 45 seconds is what's gonna be your response. It's what will be sent to the ETS. So those 45 seconds are recorded. You need to answer the question that you had on the screen. And that's it. They move on to the next question. Okay, guys? So is that okay so far? Do you have any questions? As far as the format goes or anything? No questions?
So, what is a good structure
I'm
to
sorry.
speak? What could be a good structure to speak this in this
Okay.
section?
Question. We'll get there in a few seconds. We'll get there. So, well, before we look at the structure to answer the question, let's talk about the preparation time. You get 15 seconds to prepare your response. What you need to do during these 15 seconds is just think, and maybe if you want, you can take a couple of notes, write down a couple of words. Now, what are you gonna do? You obviously read the question, right? It's not necessary that you waste time reading everything. For example, in this case, in the first part, they say state whether you agree or disagree. So as soon as you see those words, agree or disagree, then you guys should already know that you're dealing with an agree and disagree type of question. We are going to talk about the types of questions. Agree and disagree is probably the most common one. Okay, so as soon as you see the word agree, you know that you're dealing with an agree or disagree. So what they ask you is, do you agree or do you disagree with this statement, right? So that means, do you think that learning through online courses is more effective than in a traditional way? Or do you disagree? Do you don't think, do you don't think that learning through online courses is more effective? That's what they're asking. So the first thing that you need to know, you have to always choose one side. They always give you two options, and you always have to choose one of them and support it completely. That means that you could completely agree. You only have two options. Either you completely agree and you think that online courses are more effective, that's option one, or you completely disagree, and that's option two. Completely disagree, and you think that online courses are not more effective. You only have those two choices. That means that you can't say, I think it depends, I think both of them are effective, I like both, or I don't think any of those work, I think they should be a balance, I think they should mix. You can't say anything like that. You are either completely agreeing with this and saying that online courses are more effective, or you're saying that they are not. One of the options. You can't waver or be in between the both of them, say that it depends, say that they both have advantages and disadvantages. Don't do anything like that, please. You either completely agree or completely disagree, first of all. So when you're thinking, you need to make up your mind. Choose one option. What do we choose? Do we choose option one, we completely agree, or do we choose option two? What do you guys think? What option should we choose?
Completely agree.
Completely agree. So we're going to say that online courses are more effective. So you think about your answer, you say, yes, I agree. Online is more effective. And then what you guys need to do is think of one or two reasons to support this point. So you need to ask yourself, why would online courses be more effective? Can you guys think of a reason of why they are more effective?
Flex time.
Okay, save time, that's correct. Can you maybe think of another reason?
Look again with more details.
I'm sorry, Luis?
Look again the video and watch more carefully, more details.
Okay, we can maybe say that you have more material because yes, you can watch the recordings of the classes, the material maybe. Okay. All right, so maybe that's related to the fact that you learn more or you learn better in a way, right? That's related somehow. So you think of your reasons, you can think of one or two. It doesn't matter if you just have one, that's fine. But if you guys are gonna think of two, then you need to make sure that the two reasons that you thought about are completely different from one another. That means you can say in the first one that you save time, and in the second, if you say something like, also you spend less time because you don't have to commute, that's the same, right? It's exactly the same. So if you were to say something like that, then you would be redundant and you wouldn't be concise. And remember, the one thing that they want for you and for your response is to be concise. So if you guys think of two reasons, but deep down they are the same, forget about one, right? You just focus on one. In this case, they are both different, so we're gonna go ahead with both, but if you just have one, then it's okay as well. That's what you have to do during those 15 seconds. You don't have time for anything else. So you just think about your opinion and your one or two reasons. Is that okay so far? Do you guys have any questions? All right. So you've already prepared your response, and then they will give you 45 seconds to speak. What do you do? How do you organize? How do you structure your response to answer Erasmus' question? So the way that you're going to answer, it will depend on the question. I mean, only your introduction will depend on the question. Remember that you guys had 45 seconds, right? What you always at least need to have first is an introduction, then your main reason or your reason number one, in case you have two, and then an example. That is what you guys need: an introduction, a reason, and an example. You always need to have 3 layers. I like pizza because it's cheap. For instance, every day I buy myself this pizza from this pizza restaurant, and it costs me $3 a slice of pizza, let's say. So you have your introduction, I like pizza, your opinion, you have your reason, why do you like pizza? Because it's cheap. And then you have your example. You know, how much cheap how much cheap is it? It's $3. So look at those 3 layers, right? You have an opinion, a general opinion, you have a general reason. Pizza in general is cheap. And then in your example, you give details, right? So that's basically what you guys need to have. In your introduction, what you're going to do, first of all, is always, please, this is a great tip, you need to answer the question using the same verb that you had in the question. The instructions were state whether you agree or disagree, right? So it was an agree and disagree type. If they ask you, do you agree or disagree? Then you have to use the same verb, agree or disagree. Don't change the verb. Don't say, I think that online courses are more effective. Don't do that. Use the same verb. Okay, guys? So in this case, we said that we agree. So what we're going to do is say, I strongly agree. We're going to add this adverb. Always use an adverb. I strongly, I completely agree, I totally agree, whatever adverb you want to use. And then if you have agree or disagree, you always have to repeat the statement. You have to say, I strongly agree that online courses are more effective. You will have this in the question, so you don't have to remember. It's on your screen, right? And that's your introduction. I strongly agree that online courses are more effective than traditional courses, let's say. Your introduction cannot be more than 8 seconds. 7 or 8 seconds is more than enough. If you spend more than 8 seconds, then you're wasting time and you're not having a proportionate response. If you spend 15 seconds, that's 1/3 of your response. And you can have 1/3 of your response in your introduction just to answer the question. No. Okay, so 8, 7 seconds more than enough. And it's just practicing, really. So any questions so far? Okay. Then we have the reason. So to introduce your reason, some common mistakes, I have heard a lot of students use a transition word here and say, first of all, first. Don't do that, please, because it will create a bigger separation that you don't need. And if you say first of all, to start, to begin with, any of those transitions, what happens is what you're saying is you're implying that there's more than one reason. When you say first, that means that there's probably, or there has to be a second. And if you run out of time and you don't get to say the second reason, it's gonna sound incomplete in a way. So don't say first, or first of all, or to begin with, or anything like that. What you could say is since, because, as, due to the fact that, for, whatever you want. It's better if you don't say because. To be honest, since is the one that I prefer, but if you want, you can change it, no problem. As long as it's because, since, for, as, due to the fact that. Whatever you use is okay. And then you give your reason. So, I strongly agree that online courses are more effective since you save time. My suggestions for the first reason. First and most importantly, keep it short. I have had so many students that unnecessarily over-explain their reasons. So they're like, since when you have online courses, you save a lot of time, since you spend less time, and you can do with that time other activities that you couldn't do if you take traditional courses. So all this time that you're saving is a benefit. So you start saying the same, it's total waste of time. So my advice is keep it short. I strongly agree that online courses are more effective since students save time. That's it. That's my first tip. Keep it short. Second tip will be keep it general. Your first reason has to be general. That means don't talk about yourself. Don't tell me, since I save time. Don't use the first person. You can use the second person if you want, since you save time. Or if you're talking about students, you can say, since students save time. Or since one saves time if you want. Whatever you want, but don't use the first person. Okay? Keep it general. And that's your reason. Okay, to be honest, I would spend maybe 10 to even 20 seconds here, depending on whether it needs explanation or not. There are going to be cases where you need to explain because it's not obvious. But when it's obvious, don't explain. You know, if it's something that needs explanation, then yes, you can explain, of course. But if it doesn't, don't waste your time trying to like fill out the time there. Okay, guys? Any questions so far? We are here. Okay, perfect. And then you need to give an example. You need to say, for instance, all right. When you give your example, if you want, you can say, for instance, for example, to illustrate, to exemplify, whatever transition you want to use that is used for examples. Okay? And when you guys give your examples, there are many options, there are many ways in which you can give examples, but you have, I would say that the two best options, this depends, and when we're practicing, I will tell you, the best thing that you can do to earn a really high score, a level 5 score, is to have a past single experience, personal experience. That is the best idea thing that you could do. What do I mean by that? You can tell a story, make up a story. The only rule that you have for your examples is that you include a lot of details, okay? As long as you give details, it'll be okay. But if you want to go higher, you can talk about a personal experience. For example, you could say, I strongly agree that online courses are more effective since students get to save time. For instance, you could say, for instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic, in my university, the students were forced to take online courses. I remember that I only took this biology course one semester, and I know I saved a lot of time in the process. Instead of having to commute to my university every day and spend 45 minutes from home to my university, I saved that time. That means that I ended up saving around 2 hours a day in just commuting. I also saved time in getting ready for university since I didn't have to always get ready or take a shower. And all this time that I saved, I could dedicate it to study more. So I could be more productive in a way. I could dedicate it to review the lessons, to review the material, or prepare for my exams, whatever, right? So as you guys can see, I'm giving specific details. It's a past story. I'm talking about one specific point in the past, COVID-19 pandemic. I'm giving specific details. I was taking a biology course, a biology class. I saved 45 minutes in commuting. I dedicated this time to prepare for exams, let's say, right? So, and another thing that's very important, of course, I didn't say it, but I think you guys know what I mean. It obviously has to be related to what you said in your reason, right? This example is an example of your reason, right? If you're saying that you save time, you need to give me an example of one time where you took an online course and you saved time. And that's why you think that it's more effective, right? It has to be related. Your reason in your example and your opinion need to be really related. But that's only one of 3 ways that you could do this. Another example would be to give personal examples as well. but they don't necessarily have to be in the simple past. You don't have to talk about one single experience. You can talk about routines, habits, or facts. So things that are happening to you right now or that you constantly do. You could say, for example, for instance, right now in university, I am taking a biology class, an online biology class, and I save a lot of time. I save 45 minutes in commuting. I can use this time that I'm saving instead of commuting in practicing, reviewing the material, studying and preparing for my exams, which is why I do believe that for me it's more effective, right? So again, it's a personal example. It has details, but I'm talking about something that's happening right now. And the difference is that I'm not using the past tenses. Now, why am I giving you guys this option? Because I know that sometimes some of you may not be so comfortable in using past tenses. I have seen many students make mistakes with this with conjugating the verbs correctly. So I mean, technically the ideal thing would be for you to improve your grammar, to learn to use past tenses correctly, and then to try to aim for this. But if you guys don't have a lot of time and you're taking the test this month, then I'm not gonna tell you to study grammar. So I give you this option. For those of you who don't have enough time to practice past tenses, you can just go with the example in the present. Okay? And another option that you guys have is to talk about a fact. So you can talk about research, you can talk about something that you read, something that you saw, facts, numbers, statistics, average. For example, you could say, for instance, I read in the BBC News that during the COVID-19 pandemic, students saved in total around 300 hours, university students, just by not commuting. In average, they used to spend 3 hours a day in just commuting. So this time, the students could dedicate it to studying and preparing better, which is why grades increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I am talking about a fact. I'm obviously making it up. It's probably not true, but it's something realistic, right? It's something that makes sense. During the 19 pandemic, most universities were only offering online courses. That's a fact. So in average, according to this research, students got to save around 3 hours a day, which they could use to prepare for exams according to a survey. And that's why grades increased in 20% in most universities, for example, right? I'm talking about numbers, statistics, percentages. To be honest, I would say this is the hardest type. So I'm just giving you the option in case you guys want to try it. But I would say the first and the second are probably the most plausible. Okay, guys? And that's it. That's all you actually need. Your introduction, your reason, and your example. Okay, guys? Is that okay? Do you have any questions about me so far? All right. Now that's all you actually need. You can get a perfect score if you have those 3 things. But if you guys happen to have extra time, let's say that you have 5 more seconds, 5 seconds left. What do? I wouldn't leave those 5 seconds to just go. What I would do is if you have 5 seconds, go with a conclusion, a short conclusion. So you can tell me, this is the main reason why I feel this way. This is the main reason why I believe that online courses are more effective, right? A short conclusion. This is why I think so. If you have 3 seconds, so that's why I think so. 2 seconds. If you have 5, you make it a little bit longer. This is the main reason why I feel this way, a little bit longer. Now, if you have 8, or let's say if you have 10 seconds, 15 seconds, even 20 seconds sometimes, in that case, you would have to have a second reason. or elaborate more in your example. There's something going on there. Maybe your example wasn't too elaborated. But if you happen to have this extra time, then you need to think of another reason. You need to say, furthermore, thanks to online classes, students have more material. For example, they can watch the recordings of their previous classes to study. Right? It's a second reason. You make it short. Obviously, you're not going to spend too much time as you did here. You don't necessarily have to have a second example, not necessary. If you have more time, you can go with a second example, but it's not needed at all. Okay, guys? So that's it. Is that okay? Do you
Yes.
have any questions now? Okay. So I'm gonna give you guys 3 examples using those 3 different types of examples that you can use so that you see how I organize my time, you see how I speak, how I deliver my response, the things I say, the things I don't say, how my introduction is, whether or not I'm meeting the criteria that we talked about, right? Remember vocabulary, grammar, delivery, fluency, pauses, filler words. You can evaluate everything based on what we talked about before. So you can evaluate my response. So let's see. I'm gonna give you guys 3 different responses for the same question using the same introduction and the same reason, but with the 3 different examples. So the first one with a past experience would be something like this. I strongly agree that online courses are more effective than the traditional ones, since students get to save a lot of time by having online classes. For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic 3 years ago, my university forced students to have online courses. I remember that I took 3 different courses one semester: biology, psychology, and business. And in total, I ended up saving around 2 hours a day just by not having to commute, without counting the time that I saved by saving the time by not getting dressed for university. This time I used it to prepare and study better for my exams, and I ended up having better grades. Right? So you're saying that it's more effective. I said that you have saved time, and I gave a personal experience in the past, right? During the 19 pandemic, this is what happened, and so forth. One type of example. The second one would be something like this. I strongly agree that online courses are more effective than the traditional ones, since you get to save a lot of time. For instance, students get to save time by not having to commute. Right now, I'm taking a biology course online, and I save around 45 minutes that takes me to get from home to university every single day. I can use this time to prepare better for my exams, to study other content, to take other classes. So I benefit more from having online classes by saving all this time. This is why I feel that online courses are definitely more effective than traditional ones. Right? That took me less time in the example. I didn't use the past tense at all, but I gave specific details, right? And it was still a valid example. And the other way, by giving facts, would be something like this. I strongly agree that online courses are more effective than traditional ones, since students get to save a lot of time when taking online classes. For instance, I recently read an article by the BBC News that was analyzing the advantages and the effects of online courses during the COVID-19 pandemic. It was interesting to see that in average, students saved during the COVID-19 pandemic from 2 to 3 hours a day just by not having to commute. That meant that students could take a wider variety of classes, during this time, and it increased grades in most students. Okay, so that's a fact, right? I am giving specific data, specific numbers. Of course, it's not true, but it makes sense, in a way. So that's it. Those are the 3 different types of examples you can give. As you can see, that's all you need, right? An introduction, your reason, and your example. Is that okay? Do you guys have any questions now?
Where can I find different examples of response in this part of the speaking section?
Do you mean examples of responses or examples of questions?
Of responses.
Responses. So that's going to be a little bit hard. We are going to be analyzing a few sample responses. I think there was a website. I think it's Best My Test. I don't know if they have independent speaking. Free text questions. No, it wasn't Best My Test then. What was it? Okay, let's just search. Thoughtful Resources. This is the one that offers a lot of sample responses for speaking, writing. Okay, so you have a couple of them here. Okay, I mean, there's not a lot, but I think it's enough for you guys to see some. These are all 5-level responses. So I'm sending you guys this link.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. It's actually a good way of learning by listening to sample responses. Any other questions so far? Hey guys. So another thing because today is just our theory class, right? We're going to be practicing tomorrow, don't worry. Another thing that I wanted to say was these are the topics that you can have in the first question. Most of the time, you will get easy topics, so you don't have to worry too much. It's never going to be something technical. You don't have to actually know anything. They won't ask you about let's say programming or neuroscience or anything. They ask your opinion for simple things, everyday things like work, education, academic life, work life. So things like the one we had, right? Do you prefer online classes, traditional classes? Do you prefer to work alone or to work with your colleagues in projects? Relationships, like do you think that your family has a bigger influence or that family has a bigger influence on students, let's say, or that their friends have a bigger influence? So relationships, family relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, even like work relationships. Recreation, so things like entertainment. Do you prefer to watch comedies or action movies? Let's say, do you prefer to play sports or to read? Let's say, I don't know. Traveling, like, do you prefer to travel alone or to travel with a companion? Do you prefer to go to the beach during the holidays or go to the mountain? Lifestyle, so things like diets, things like your schedule. Do you prefer to have an early dinner, a late dinner? Do you prefer to go to sleep earlier, later at night? Do you prefer to wake up early in the morning to stay in a little bit more? Health, like, do you prefer to exercise in the morning or afternoon? Do you prefer to run or to walk when you exercise? Right, that type of thing. Most of the time, it will be something like that. Now, of course, sometimes if you're not too lucky, you may get something a little bit more complicated, but still, it's not very complicated. So for example, they could ask you about the effects of technology or anything related to technology. Do you think that technology has had mostly positive or negative effects? Do you agree that technology has made our lives easier? Do you prefer sending text messages or making phone calls, let's say? Do you think that children should be allowed to play video games or not? Then you have finance decisions, very simple finance decisions. So if you won the lottery, would you save the money or would you spend it right away? Let's say. Do you think that it's a good idea to save 5% of your salary every month? That type of question. Then the environment, something that sometimes appears, like, let's say, do you think that carbon emissions should be forbidden? Do you think that private cars should be allowed in cities? Global issues, things like maybe the police force, sometimes violence. You don't really have a lot of them, but it could happen. And finally, social and political issues. So for example, there was one that was like, do you think that the government should be allowed to rule more than 2 to 4 years? Or let's say like, yeah, it's very rare, you don't have a lot of these questions, but there was like 1 or 2 in all of the ones that I've seen. So that's what you have, okay? Either way, it's never going to be something too complicated. And the good thing about this question, to be honest, is that you can answer it the way you want. Even if it's a very complicated question, you can make it simple. Like, let's say they're asking about politics, right? They are like, do you think that the government should be able to rule for more than 4 years, or should 4 years be the limit, let's say? So you can make it simple. Obviously, if you want to complicate yourself for no reason, you can start like going to talk about like theories of economic theories or history, whatever. But if you want to make it simple, you can keep it simple. You could say, I believe that the government should only rule for 4 years because people get old, let's say. And most presidents that I've seen are usually old and they start standing for office. So in 4 years, they get tired and they start doing things wrong. It's an easy response. It's an easy way out. Obviously, remember that they're not evaluating your responses in the terms of your ideas. They don't want to see how good your ideas are. They just want to see everything we talked about, right? That your ideas make sense. Does this make sense? It does make sense. It's related. Yes, it's related. If you have good grammar, good articulation, everything's fine. You can make something up. You can say, for example, the current president in my country has been ruling for 10 years now, and he's really old. He's now 95 years old. And I see that he's very tired, which is he can't even speak well anymore. So it's nothing, I mean, it's obviously not true, but it's related to what you said before. Right? So you can always find a way to keep it simple. I don't suggest that you make it too complicated. And I've seen many students try to complicate themselves for no reason. Don't do that. Keep it simple. Keep it easy. So that's what I would say. Maybe I could also say that. Okay, guys? So, do you have any questions now? No? No questions?
No, miss.
Okay, guys. So tomorrow we'll be practicing. We'll be analyzing some sample responses. And yes, that's what we're going to be doing. We're first going to analyze a couple of sample responses. We're going to look for specific things that I can give you as tips. And then we will be practicing. So you guys will be answering a couple of questions, and I will be giving you some feedback based on your responses. And we can also talk about the vocabulary related to these topics. Okay, guys? Please,
Okay.
before you go, though, don't forget today's daily survey. It should be on your screens. And I will be seeing you all tomorrow in class.
Okay, miss. See you tomorrow.
Hey guys, take good care.
Amazing.